Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the show. My name is ShinyMikablu. I am one of your hosts tonight, and I am joined by the lovely Vineyardtrio over to my left? Left. I can never tell which way I'm facing on camera. But tonight we are going to be discussing the horror genre of movies, games, books, shows, etc. Mostly focusing on movies and games because that's what we're known for. I am known for streaming horror games, and we both love horror movies. Isn't that right, Jan?
Oh, yes, very much. It's kind of an understatement.
Yeah. So we used to it's been a while since we've done this. We used to actually watch horror movies almost every night for, what was it, like 3 weeks straight, just about? Or?
It was just about like right under a month. Yeah, straight. Almost every single night. I think we took like one night off because we were both really tired.
Yeah, I think we both fell asleep before midnight that night, which is very unusual for us.
Yeah.
Alright, well, as I said, I am ShinyMikablu. I play a lot of horror games on stream. I do a lot of indie horror games, mostly on Sundays. I'm currently playing on Tuesdays. I'm playing through Bioshock. So you can catch that tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, just like my usual stream time. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
There's not really much to tell as of right now because I've been having some internet issues because we are switching from poopy DSL over to fiber, hopefully very, very soon. Yay, exciting. And when that becomes a thing, then I can get back into streaming. I used to do food and drink, art, and games, but mostly games. And I would do a mixed bag of just fun games and horror games as well. So, because I love playing spoopy games and getting scared. I don't know why, but I do.
I mean, why does anyone like anything, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
So I know, so tonight we are going to be talking about the horror genre in general and trying to define what horror as a genre means, both in general and to both of us personally. Mostly related to movies and games. So I just want to talk a little bit about the plans for the future of the show and like my streams and your streams in general. So specifically for the future of this show, I know we were talking about trying to play a game together.
Yes.
I have a couple thoughts on that. Um, Probably a game like We Were Here. Is it called We Were Here? Yeah, because I know we've done that before, where it was like that puzzle
Is it we
game.
were here or we were there? We were here. Yes.
It was
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of
yeah.
those. It was one of those.
Something like that. We were somewhere.
We were somewhere. So we'll probably be playing that at some point on stream. Probably have some guests later on down the line talking about their experiences with horror. Excuse me. But for tonight, we are going to be talking about just horror in general. So I have a couple links here, and I'm going to post the first one in chat for anyone who wants to follow along with us. Oh, but first, I do want to say hello to Mechanical Whimsy, who indeed was in here first. But they did
Yes.
not do the redeem, so are they actually really first?
Big questions. Those are the real questions.
Those are the real hard-hitting questions. I mean, who cares about horror? We don't know who was first.
The mechanical or the whimsy?
All right, so this article I just posted is by Jason Hellerman from October 26, 2020. A little bit outdated, especially the first couple sentences in here, and you'll see why once I start reading into it. But he begins by saying the horror genre in film and television is one of the most popular moneymakers, next to superheroes. Skits, welcome in. How are you doing? Always nice to see you. Welcome to the stream. Let's see. Jason Hallerman goes on to say, if you were going to bet on an original movie to be a box office hit, what genre would you pick? Truth is, there's only one genre that again and again provides hits across both film and television and games.
And games.
Horror. Horror. Even before Jason Blum became one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood, horror has been a valuable bet. Alfred Hitchcock dabbled in the darkness with Psycho, but prior to Norman Bates, we had Universal monster movies and things like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I think it's how it's pronounced.
I think so too.
Horror subgenres are aplenty, and we'll get to them later. What do you think about that opening for that article?
I think it's a pretty accurate description, because I even looked into personally, knowing that this is what we were going to talk about. I did look into the actual definition of horror, and the big question is like, well, what is horror? I understand it's a big thing, and yes, it is. I mean, one of the main aspects when it comes to books, to games, to movies, to TV series. It's one of the most popular. You've got your rom-com, you've got your everything else, but the other big thing is always horror. It's a big gravitational pull. And so it made me go, well, what is it? Like, what is it about horror? And the definition was loosely based in many ways. It's the feeling of fear, shock, disgust. In the entertainment industry, like the games and movies, it's defined as arousing those feelings of horror and intense dismay. So that being stated, the question still stands, like, what is horror? We know its definition, but what it really means depends on the person, I would think.
Yeah, because
So,
you and I are perfect examples. I don't get scared by games, movies, etc. Like, if you've caught any of my streams, you will know it is very, very rare that I get jump scared. It is even
yes.
more rare that I get actually disturbed by what I'm seeing on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
There was one game that made me, like, really got to me on like a primal level. If you remember Soma, and just the
Uh-huh.
existential questions that it was asking, which we will get into later.
And I know there was one good jump scare from you, from Maid of Skur, I think it was. I mean, you heard the audible gasp as you getting jumped, and I was like, that was chef's kiss, because you can almost, having been your friend for so long now and going and watching these horror films, and we would like to keep our cameras on because it's good to see each other react in different ways while watching the films. And it's, I don't know how to explain it, but like when I see you, I can tell when it gives you a bit of a jump, or you react to it because it's like the flutter of your eyelashes, or you kind of make this face that's, it's just like a okay, that got me. But where you've got the difference with me, where I'm an audible, like I'll jump or you'll see me jerk, and so it's so good to see you react so strongly to certain things that it's just, that's pure gold for me anyway.
But I would like to say welcome into Shattered Rift, who redeemed the first redemption. So he was, in fact, first in the stream, and no one was here before him, especially not
No,
Mechanical Whimsy, who
and not
claimed to
Skids
be
either. Nope.
first, but was not actually first.
I saw no one.
Absolutely no one. Welcome in, everyone. So, as the title of the stream says, Vineyardtrio and I here are discussing the definition of horror as it relates to these games, TV shows, and books to a lesser extent. Cypress, welcome in. How are you doing tonight? Always good to see you. Yeah, we'll be focusing mostly on movies and games, going a little bit about TV shows, and yeah, books. I can't remember the last time I've actually read a horror book. The ones I usually read are typically defined as horror fantasy or fantasy horror. So there's more of the fantastical supernatural elements rather than just like strictly something like Frankenstein or Dracula, which, yes, I know,
Right.
brought to life by lightning, monster, and vampire. Yes, they're supernatural, but I'm talking
Right.
more like uh, like not like super powery stuff, but just like
Hmm.
witches and like using magic and stuff. Like in the more fantastical elements, like I said, rather than just like, okay, this is a horror story. That makes
Right,
sense.
right.
Snowy Wolfo,
Yeah.
welcome in.
And Cypress. Hang on, hang. For me, with the books, readings, and this is this is where our friendship has to break off. Like, we can't be friends anymore because I love Stephen King, and I know how you're not a fan of Stephen King. Um, because this bookshelf, you can't see it because my thing is blurred, but I have a bookshelf behind me that is almost 100% nothing but Stephen King. Um, and that's because he does a lot of, as most people know, he is a horror writer, and a part of that is growing up being exposed to Stephen King books via family members, and then my paternal grandmother used to have us watch horror films, and a lot of them were the late 80s, early 90s adaptations of Stephen King's novels like Children of the Corn, The First It, and stuff like that. So, in The Stand, all of those. So, because of watching and seeing my mother read the Stephen King, it just was like, oh, okay. And it was just like this whole own little world that I was like, and dive. And it just made it a thing for me. So yeah.
Okay,
he's where I go. I mean, I do like the fantastical, like you use the fantasy horror is also really, really good. I won't lie. I do enjoy that too, obviously. As we've seen a few movies where it's, witches, wizards, things like that in the horror genre, not so much the fantasy genre. So, I mean, I just like horror in general. Like, if it's gonna elicit some sort of fear, psh, I'm down.
or try to in my case.
You're right. Right.
So I do want to clarify something. We were on another stream of a friend of mine, Curviously Jen, who happens to be your sister.
Yes.
I think it was during her subathon stream just the other day when we were talking about Stephen King, and
Yes.
so Jen brought up the Dark Tower series as being her favorite series, which is not a horror series; it is a fantasy series.
It is
So
very much fantasy.
it's a little bit of a break, a little bit different from what Stephen King usually writes.
Yes. I mean, it does have some horror aspects to it, but it's not a horror book like he's known for.
Right. So, like I said,
Yeah.
it's more of a fantasy series with some horror aspects to it. I did enjoy the first book of the Dark Tower series. The only reason I didn't enjoy the second one mostly was because one of the characters is horribly racist. And yes, I know that is very important to the plot, but
Yeah.
I just don't like that kind of character. But I did I did really enjoy the first book. I have read some other Stephen King works. I tried to read it, but it is so long and so dense that it's
It
hard to
is.
read.
It is. It is. It's dense. Under the Dome is very similar, with it being another massive volume, um, and just in its denseness. It's when you think it's funny because a lot of people, when you think dense, sometimes you think it's compact, and in this instance, I think of it more like a cake. When you talk of it being, or bread, when it's being dense, it's airy and dense, and that's how these books are. They've got those airy pockets where it's just lulling you, and or emptiness, that is something where you're just kind of like, okay, well, we could skip past this, please, and then move on to the juicier bits, or the meatier bits, and that's where it gets good again. And it Under the Dome, some moments of The Stand are very much those dense books. Yeah, a pace filler. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Also, I would like to say welcome into, is that Wendy Bird? Looks like that's how it's pronounced. If I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, please let me know, because I would like to pronounce everyone's names correctly. But yes, welcome in, welcome to the stream. We are currently doing, we're discussing, well, right now we're discussing horror novels. But we're discussing horror as a genre in general, and what it means in general, and what it means to us personally. Um, I think you're right on the money about like how dense is defined with novels like that. And I think that's one thing that movies and games and shows, well, shows to a lesser extent because they're much more long running. I think that's what movies and
Yeah.
games have, especially movies over novels, is that the entire story is compacted into such a narrow time frame that it cuts out a lot of filler.
Yes.
Which personally, I think for it, less so the miniseries from the 90s, but more so the recent ones, because they were about 2.5 hours a piece, I think.
Roughly.
But they did cut out a lot of the film. And I will say that It Chapter 1 is one of only 2 movies to ever actually give me nightmares. I dreamt of that goddamn clown for 3 straight nights afterwards. The other movie that gave me nightmares was The Ring. When Samara is crawling out of the TV, and then like you can't see any of her face because the long black hair completely covering her face,
Right.
like soaked to the bone. Just so creepy. And looking back on it now, it's not that scary. But when I first saw it when I was in my early 20s, I think late teens, early 20s, something like that, horror still actually affected me to a degree. And I had a nightmare that night about Samara trying to crawl out of my TV and trying to get me. Are there any movies that ever gave you nightmares like that?
Funny enough for me, both of them were Stephen King.
Of course. And before you finish answering, sorry to interrupt, I would also like to ask chat the exact same question. Has there been any, specifically movies, but also if you want to mention games or novels or shows as well, has there been anything in the horror genre that has given you like really bad nightmares? And if so, what was it?
So I'm gonna kind of not really backtrack. I want to like elaborate more on that. So, as we stated, personally, horror is something that is supposed to elicit fear. It's giving you that big scare factor. For me, being a female mother, watching things that play or playing certain games, um, and reading books, it's almost easy for me to put myself in the like main character's shoes or sub character's shoes and think as they would in any kind of given circumstance. So I would be able to see the fear that they do. And um like if it's executed properly, especially in shows or games. For instance, if there's harm to a child or a person's psyche, it's pretty easily relatable for me, and it can easily be turned into something that elicits fear in myself. Um, and that being said, the two that actually gave me nightmares for whatever reason, um, was for movies. It was the It series originally, and that's why I don't like to look at clowns now,
Okay,
which
I
is
can see
most
that.
most common. It's very common for our age. And then the second one, and this is where I'm not quite certain that it's something that I'm relating to, but it did give me nightmares, and that was the original Salem's Lot. And it was the way he looked because he had the fangs weren't like typical vampire fangs on the side. He had the two front teeth were long, sharp, and pointy. And it was also that with like Nosferatu. And it because that's where it was based off of. And for whatever reason, that just gave me nightmares. I don't know what for or why, but it did. And then as far as books go, which relates to me, and that was more recent after having my son, was Mr. Mercedes. And that was, I've not seen the series. I've only read the book. And I read the first chapter and I had to put it down. I couldn't keep reading it because a baby gets harmed. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And it gave me nightmares. Everything gives my sister nightmares. That's true. Fact. She gives herself nightmares, by the way.
Curiously, Jen, welcome in. Thank you for the subscription for 8 months. And you're right, we almost do have a Twitch baby. So start thinking of names for our Twitch baby. So I've never actually read Salem's Lot or Mr. Mercedes. So I don't actually know what they're about. But from what you said so far, with Salem's Lot, the fact that you said it was the 2 front teeth that were like pointed fangs instead of like the ones next to them like usual.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that was done on purpose specifically to get that reaction because it was so different. I mean, because if you think about it in nature, like we have sharp but flat front teeth.
Yes.
Most predators do not have flat front teeth. They have sharp fangs all the way around, or at least all the way around in the front.
Right.
I'm wondering if that was done in Salem's Lot on purpose to give people that guttural primal fear of like wolves or bears or something else out there lurking in the dark.
Possibly. And I know, like I said, I know it's in the original Salem's Lot. Now they did a almost like a revamp of it. Early 2000s, I think, with Rob Lowe in it. And by the way, Rob Lowe. Anyway. And I actually enjoyed that one more. It had a little bit more of the comedy in it. And I remember reading the books, and I don't remember in the books them stating at this point that his fangs were the 2 front teeth. But that it's been years since I've read the book, and I just don't remember at this point. So
yeah, that's
I'd
fair.
have to reread it.
I mean, there are a lot of things from books that I read years ago that I can't remember.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what I mentioned. Little tricks that movies and shows, specifically movies that I know of, that what they do to elicit that sense of fear that is so present in the horror genre. I know that what was it? I think it was the first Exorcist movie, like the very first one. Absolute classic epitome of horror right there. I know throughout certain scenes they played. I think it was the sound of bees buzzing or like wasps buzzing, like very very low to the point where you could just like barely hear it, and like consciously you didn't even pick up what was going on, but subconsciously that sound just invokes that sense of fear, that sense of something is wrong. And and when you can't tell on screen, like if you can't tell what is wrong, but your body's telling you something's wrong, that just makes it worse and worse and worse, and it builds that tension. It's kind of like motion sickness, but in horror based, because if I remember correctly, motion sickness is generally triggered by a disconnect from your body's sense of balance. Like your body can tell that it's moving, but your other senses, like specifically sight, sound, say that you're not moving. Because like if you're reading a book or something in a car, your body can tell you're moving, your eyes are not moving. And that disconnect is generally what causes motion sickness. It's one of the causes of motion sickness, not the only cause.
Right.
So I think being able to find a way to bring that into horror and elicit that kind of reaction, one, it's just brilliant, and two, very, very effective. Because when I first watched The Exorcist, it got to me a little bit. There were times in the movies where like I was actually on edge. And like, I mean, I'm not that old. I'm only 34 years old. I was not alive when The Exorcist first came out. So I did not get to see it when it was in its prime. I saw it like years and years and years afterwards. And it's still kind of got to me during certain scenes.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was
It's
that subliminal sound that really did it.
Yeah, no, I have to agree because that's when you know a horror film has actually got something juicy to it. That fear elicit sense. And I mean it in the way that it attacks your senses in general. Like you can see an image of a cake that's your favorite cake, and your brain is like, I know I can smell this picture. And it's the same way when you hear certain things, your brain connects it to a fear that you have. Um, and I think that's what those movies, those good, a lot of the classics, they prey on your senses and help bring that forward more, to help bring that fear to the forefront. Like it goes by the definition of eliciting fear, because it preys on basic fears, not so much like mystic fears or paranormal fear. It's legit everyday fear. Like you said with the bees, like you hear a bee buzzing, your first reaction is you're gonna start karate chopping the air, like looking for this bee. It's that same thing.
Yep.
And that's when you know it's A+ work right there, because it brings that initial fear. Like, and it's not even like that type of fear where you're gonna like pee your pants kind of fear, but it's still it's a primal fear.
Yep. It's your body telling you something is wrong, you need to run. And then,
Yes.
but your conscious brain not knowing exactly what's going on. Specifically with the subliminal sound. I mean, like, if you hear a bee, like, out in your yard or something, you're gonna look around till you find it. And then,
Yep.
start karate chopping.
Yeah. Yes.
So I will say so I did not watch the first It miniseries back in the 90s. I have only actually seen the two newer movies from the last 5 years or so, It and It Chapter 2. At the end of my road, there is one of those sewer grates that looks almost exactly like the one beginning of It. When It Chapter 1 first came out, I think this was about a week after it first came out, there was a red balloon coming from that sewer grate. Someone had tied a red balloon to a really long string and a rock and dropped the rock down the sewer grate, so the balloon was just like floating like 4 feet out of the grate. It looked exactly like the red balloons from It. And as soon as I saw that, like, I actually shuddered. First time I saw that, I shuddered, and then realized, oh wait, no, it can't be It. It isn't real. It's just someone playing a prank. But the fact that it actually made me shudder like that, and again, It Chapter 1 was one of only 2 movies to ever actually give me nightmares.
I know they did a big like news thing out in our area, because the weekend of release for It Chapter 1, they had so many people go out and actually put balloons on the sewer grates around St. Louis. And they ended up putting it like in the news. They were like, whoever is doing this, please stop. You're freaking people out. And it's so sad that a balloon of all things would incite that much fear in people, but that's the point. And that's what makes horror just so good.
Exactly.
And I do want to read, I know we've had a few people comment on things that give them, the spookies. My sister says, Curviously Jen, she says, teeth. My brain is listening and looked right at my child. Have you ever seen an x-ray of a child growing their adult teeth? That's nightmare fuel. I have to agree.
I have seen pictures of that. That is terrifying, because it's just like an entire row of extra teeth, like right here and like right here below the nose line. It is. I want to see if I can find a picture of that.
It is terrifying. I remember even seeing ultrasounds of my son, and in utero, no less. And you can see, I have one where he looks like a skeleton because you see his little teeth and eye sockets, and I was like, that's a baby? Am I gonna give birth to a baby or a skeleton? What even is that? That is, and it was so creepy because it was like eye sockets and then these round white globes and then little black dots in the center. I was like, oh god.
So, I found pictures of the X-rays, but the X-rays, to me, the ones I found don't do it justice. I'm going to show a picture of an actual skull, or I don't know if this is an actual skull or a skull model. I'm choosing to assume that it's a model, but
Okay.
with some of the baby teeth still there. So let me.
Always making a weird face because they're children.
Oh, of course.
Of
All right,
course.
that's enough of that. Let's get
That's what
back
makes
to
it
our cameras.
right. That's what makes it even more terrifying because half the time they're just making weird stuff. And I see Cypress says horror is my husband. Okay.
I
I don't
mean,
believe that.
I've met her husband. She's not lying.
Okay. She's not lying. Oh boy. And
Oh
then Jen
crap!
did help
They were
correct.
saying they couldn't hear us. That's because I didn't have the audio stuff set up. Yeah, I apologize for that, guys. I hadn't planned on using that scene in OBS for a couple weeks at least. But yeah. I mean, you saw the
What?
picture. That's all you really needed to see, was just the picture.
Yeah, we were just talking about how it's creepy. That was the gist of all
Yeah,
that.
that's pretty much what we were talking about. Also, Shadowed Rift, hi, welcome in. Shadowed Rift is Cypress the Witch's husband, by the way.
For anybody that didn't know. And then Jen did also say that it does not. She was talking about in Salem's Lot, the book, when they talk about Barlow, the vampire.
Okay, yeah, I see that now.
It just says he has vampire fangs. And let's see. Jen is also she is deathly afraid of aliens. All my life, I will only ever known her to be deathly afraid of aliens. Whether it's itself. Still afraid of the dark, says Snowy Wolfo.
I mean, fear of the dark is actually a very common fear. I don't think it's a fear of actually like the dark itself, but more
what could be in the dark.
What could be there. It's less a fear of the dark and more fear of the unknown. Which
yes.
I think as humans who have evolved, I think that's probably like ingrained in us.
Mm-hmm.
Because like back before like fire technology and stuff, it's like we were prey to bigger predators. I mean, now we are the apex predators on the planet, mostly because of our intelligence, but there are creatures out there that are faster than us, that are stronger than us, that could rip us apart in like one swipe. Grizzly bears. But yeah.
I mean, they still could, but
yeah.
Continue.
But guns are a pretty big equalizer for that. But yeah, it's a fear of what could potentially be out there in the dark. A fear of what is there that could hurt us as we're sleeping.
Yes. And Skitz even says it's a fear remaining from when we were cavemen. Yeah, it's that primal, that birth fear that we are given. And I don't think, even as the world evolves and moves past things, and we've got all night lights and everything, I don't think we will ever get past that born human fear of the dark.
I don't think so either. Mechanical Whimsy says, I think it's also a fear of loss of control. We can't deal with or interact with what we can't perceive. I think that's actually a very good point. I never thought
That
about
is
loss
big
of
brain
control
move.
being part of that.
Yeah. That makes good sense too. Yeah, you can't fight what you can't see.
Yep.
And if you don't have control over it, I mean that makes it even worse.
Yep.
It's you can even say that with anything that would elicit fear, as far as like people with the horror movies or games that are very heavily based with religion. Exorcisms, or the Exorcist is another good one, um, where it's like a religious horror, um, and a lot of times it's because it's talking about the unknown, and we don't have control over that unknown, and that's a good scare tactic, and it's a good thing that elicits fear in a lot of people because it's again the fear of the unknown.
Yeah, I completely agree. And speaking of supernatural stuff like that, I do want to talk a little bit about different subgenres of horror films. Because supernatural, specifically like witchy stuff like that, does happen to be one of them on the list that I found. So this is an article from LA Film, which I will go ahead and paste in the chat if anyone wants to take a look at it with us. Subgenres of horror films explained. Right at the very top, it shows, gives 10 different subgenres as well as imagery along with them. In order, they are demonic, paranormal, sorry,
Paranoid.
paranoid.
It's the spooky oils.
I'm thinking of Paranoid Hell, that game I played a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a good
Yeah,
game, by the way. That
it
was a
was
good indie
actually.
game.
But paranormal, monster, slasher, zombie, gore, witchcraft slash supernatural, which I'm adding in there myself because, yeah, witchcraft supernatural kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Vampire, psychological, and comedic. And I believe, yeah. So this article does list, it gives examples for each one. So let's talk about the one that you just said, like supernatural and witchcraft ones. Let's talk about that for a minute, because that is honestly
Okay.
some of my favorite kind of horror, which you all know. We've had this discussion before. Like stuff like, well, I was gonna say The Conjuring, but that's more possession rather than like the witchy supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I think about it, I'm struggling to think of like a witchy supernatural movie that I really like, because it's mostly dealing with demonic possession.
I know The Craft was considered to be
That was a good
horror.
one. That was a very
and
good
that
one.
was
I remember watching that.
Oh,
When I was
that was
younger.
fantastic.
I think that may have been the movie that actually kickstarted my goth phase that I never grew out of.
I think that kickstarts a lot of people's goth phase, to be honest. Especially those of us born late 80s, mid 80s, even early 90s. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
If you got into watching The Craft, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
You probably dabbled in the witchy voodoo stuff, I'm sure, because The Craft.
Yep. Alright, so this article does give a couple examples, specifically The Witch and Suspiria. I know The Witch is more recent. I know Suspiria is older-ish. I don't exactly know when, but I know there was like an older movie that used a lot of like bright colors and neon to have like this really contrasting appearance with what you would normally assume you would find in a horror movie, like spooky, misty woods or like caves or whatever. And I know the more recent remake of it was like not attacked, criticized. That's what I'm looking for. Criticized for not doing that, because that was part of what made Suspiria great. I want to read the little blurb definition thing they have for witchcraft movies in this article. Witches have a long history of mischief and folklore. They use the power of magic to cast spells on their victims, turning them into all kinds of tortured beings. Similar to the paranormal genre, witchcraft uses supernatural elements to create fear. Movies like The Witch and Suspiria are great examples of terror caused by witches. I would also like to point out, I think it was the fourth Conjuring movie, or the third, whichever one was the last one in line at the moment. The one that had the witch who was attacking the family.
La Llorona?
No, it was one of the actual Conjuring movies with
The
Ed and Lorraine.
one of the Conjurings.
It was whichever one was the last one, because remember it had that witch that was attacking the teenager, who was like she was summoning demons to go after him because she made a pact with the devil or something. I want to say,
was that The Devil Made Me Do It?
May have been, because that was like an actual Conjuring branded movie, right? The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Yeah, then that's the one I'm talking about. That's a perfect example.
I want to say that might have been 4.
Yeah, I think it was the fourth one. Yeah, the Conjuring series and like the Conjuring universe movies, like Annabelle, Rona, The Nun, I think was one of them. That's like my favorite horror series, and you and I together have watched the entire series all the way through.
Yes, and I would gladly watch it again. Like, and it's funny because like I'll watch a lot of classic horror movies over and over again, but new age horror, usually it's a one and done. And I'm like, okay, that was good, or that was absolute garbage, which we've both kind of had those moments. Yeah. But I want to say The Conjuring and the newer It are 2 series or segments, we'll even say, like, because I mean it's 2 movies, but like I could rewatch It chapters 1 and 2 and the whole Conjuring except for La Llorona itself. The Nun was kind of iffy, but The Conjuring itself and a good portion of the Annabelle ones, I could rewatch those over and over and over again at this point. And it's rare for even me to find new age horror and want to rewatch them, because they're kind of a lot of them it's just, oh, that was good. The Oculus, I think that's what it was called, right?
The one with Karen Gillan.
Yep. I could rewatch that easy. That was another fantastic one.
That
for
one
being new age.
Yeah, that one, like, I want to say
that was a mind fuck and a half.
Yeah, I want to say it was trippy, but it wasn't trippy. But it was that kind of like, you don't know what's real, you don't know what's happening. The stuff you see on screen, you don't know what's real and what's not.
That mind fuckery for sure, because like, and those, I think that's what it helps give you, that sense of, oh, I have to rewatch this, especially if it does and I hate using this term, but it's the only term I could really think of, because it's an actual mindfuckery and a half, because it tricks you so constant with not knowing what's real, what's not real, that it gives you that drive to want to have to rewatch it, so this way you can try to piece it together and be like, okay, now I know how it ends, but you almost want to help like a puzzle piece, you just got to keep putting it more together, and it makes it that much better.
Yep.
And I know there are some that try to do that and they fail pretty bad with it, because like, it's almost like me and Mika now have this game where I'm like, called it. Ooh, I'm good at this game. I'll usually point out and be like, oh, this person's doing this, or this is what's gonna happen next, and it's become a game with us that me and you will be watching a movie and be like, you know what, it's gonna be this. And it's so good when we're both wrong, because that's what makes it good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Because we have turned into a game. We try to call the tropes when we see them. And there are some times when you'll pick up on something and I won't, or the reverse, where I'll pick up on something and it's...
Oh, yeah.
To us, it's so fun. It's like, yep, called it, knew that was going to happen. Or conversely, it's also fun to be like, yep, called, oh, wait, no, what the fuck was that? And then we're both completely wrong. Either way, it's really entertaining.
Now I want to go back into chat. Cypress says she remembers reading something about some horror movies using sound effects or music that mimics baby crying to cause the fear using the primal instinct. And that's
Yeah.
excellent. That's a good thing. Like the distorted high pitched sound. That is also another good thing to elicit fear with that basic primal instinct, like with the bees buzzing and stuff like that. That is, yes, especially mamas. Like after you give birth to a child, there is nothing more terrifying than hearing a baby scream. Like it sends these mama shivers all through you. And I know that you are not a mom biologically in any way at this point in time, but you've taken care of enough kids and you got your girlfriend that has kids and she kind of sees you as a kid of your own, but of her own rather. And I know you know what I'm talking about. You've heard it. I know you know what I'm talking about. And I
Yep.
know it'll strike fear in you too. Like anybody that is around children, small children, babies even, for an extended amount of time and gets attached to them, it makes you have that knee-jerk reaction, and that's another good thing with fear is that knee-jerk reaction of, oh God, I need to go help, or oh God, I need to run away, the fight or flight mode.
Yep. Piggybacking off that point, there is another technique that I know of that is designed to elicit, to bring up that fight or flight response and trigger a fear response in you. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a type of sound being played, like multiple sounds together, where if played in quick succession, it sounds like the sound is getting higher and higher and higher, but it actually isn't. It's staying the same tone, but you hear it getting higher and higher, or at least you think you do. And the fact that it builds up and 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 then doesn't stop, it just like forces you to like become super, super tense, like waiting for something to happen. Like, what's gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? Just get it over with already. But it doesn't happen.
Right.
I don't know
Oh,
what
yeah, those
I
are
don't
the
know what that
worst.
technique is called. But I've heard an example
Sometimes
of it.
that build up though. I see Skit says that she enjoys the Japanese horror movies. Not only are they scary, but the storylines are good. I've heard that from a lot of people, and I know me and Miko have watched quite a few movies and stuff, and we also have agreed that foreign films,
There's just something
they
different
know
about
how to
them.
work that brain, man. Yeah.
Because we were talking about the difference between Western horror films and like Eastern horror films before. And I think we came to the conclusion that, or at least like I came to the conclusion that Western horror films rely less on like really creepy stories and more on like cheap, I don't want to say cheaper scares, but I mean just like jump scare stuff. While
Mm.
like Eastern horror films, it's more of like slow building tension
Mm-hmm.
and just like that very, very slow ramp up rather than it's like a quiet part and then suddenly jump scare.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by like, I don't want to say cheaper, but it kind of is.
It kind of is. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like they'll
think
get the jump scare out of you, but it's a cheap move because it's not really scary. It's a startle response, like because
yeah,
you're not prepared for it. That's why it's a cheap dig. Because if I want to be scared, I want to be scared,
not
not
startled.
startled. Yeah.
And I
Because
think
there was one of those we watched, and it was a constant, like it was jump scare after jump scare after jump scare, and it wasn't like jump scare because it was scary. It was a jump scare because it was like, oh, it's quiet, bam, noise, and you're kind of like, why did you do that?
there's a time and a place for jump scares, and movies that rely overly much on jump scares, it just loses the effect. Because after
Yes,
like the
yes,
first three or four is like now you're expecting that you're not scared from it anymore. You might be a little startled by bam, sudden loud noise, but you're not
yes,
scared from it because you're expecting it. And
yep.
I think The Ring is the perfect example. The Ring, or as the original Japanese movie is called, Ringu, is the perfect example of that. because throughout the movie, yeah, there are a couple jump scares here and there, but I think it's only like one or two, maybe three.
Mm.
But the scary part is when Samara is coming out of the well, just slowly see her hand, see her other hand, you see her head slowly peek up, she starts slow crawling out, and then when she reaches the
Yes.
TV, there's that moment of like she stops. There's a moment of, oh, okay, I'm safe. Nope, her head starts coming through the TV. You see the entire thing, and there's no jump scare.
Yeah, I was about to say it's actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's quiet.
It is.
Because
It's
it's,
very
you kind of
quiet.
hear the high pitch of the TV whine, but the whole scene is quiet. And that's what makes it even scarier, because it's that absence of sound that makes it so scary. I'm seeing Mechanical Whimsy saying that they're not a big fan of gore. Um, it's just gratuitous and boring. And Jen says same.
Real
There are actually
quick,
3 Fs.
yeah, real quick,
Go ahead.
I just want to read Mechanical Whimsy's comment about that sound that like sounds like it's
Oh,
rising up.
yes.
Yeah, Mechanical Whimsy says it's called the Shepherd tone. And if that's true, like I have no reason to doubt you because I have no idea what it's called. But if that's true, thank you very much for saying that.
But yes, the fight, flight, and freeze. Always forget about freeze. Thank you for bringing that up as well.
Yeah, I think
And a lot of
that's
people do think it's the fight or flight, but freeze is also a big player in it because
yeah,
you become a deer in headlights.
yeah. I think technically that's like a mix between fight or flight because like you want to move, but like your body is like stuck right there, ready to fight. That's
Yep,
that's
it's
my personal opinion. There's like nothing backing that up. That's just my personal opinion.
yeah. I think it's you're stuck in that, again, deer in headlights moment where the deer wants to run, but it's also kind of stop there. Oh God, what do I do? Like, it's an over analyzing moment,
Yeah,
so to speak.
almost like you're stuck, like the moment between, am I gonna run or am I gonna fight? Where your body is like can't decide where it is, and then you just
Yep,
freeze up in indecision.
yep. Uh, Jen also says, I like movies that fuck with your brain. Like the original Saw movie, it was more of a thriller, not completely gore like the end of the series ended up being. That was also something that we were talking about, I feel like, a lot earlier, that we definitely like those mental horrors. Like, ones that make you think. Uh,
God, the
like
ending twist,
Oculus.
the ending twist to the first Saw movie. Like, I'm not gonna give it away in case anyone hasn't seen it, but if, I can't even describe my reaction because I was like, as soon as I saw a twist, I was like, oh my god, that was that, and it just like
Mm-hmm.
explained like so much that I was confused about. In my opinion, that is the perfect example of a twist done right. M. Night
Yes.
Shyamalan, take notes.
Yeah. M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong. We coming for you. Take your notes.
Yep.
Yes, 404, brain not found. Accurate. Skits, I'm gonna butcher this, and you're gonna have to correct me. Hagasuza was good too, she
I've
says.
never heard of that one.
Not heard of that one either.
I'll have to look that one up.
Gonna have to rewatch it, says Snowy Wolfo. Yeah, we might have to do that.
Getting back to the different subgenres of horror, there's one I want to talk about in particular, and you'll know why as soon as like I describe
Probably.
why. I want to talk about the comedic horror films.
Oh, please. Yes.
So the article that we've been looking at for subgenres of horror, which I am going to paste into chat again, if anyone would like to follow along or would like to read this article on their own. All the way at the bottom is the comedic horror section. Comedic horror is possibly the most fun of horror movies out there. I totally agree. It's a subgenre that is equally funny as it is scary. It takes the viewer to complete opposite ends of the horror spectrum, resulting in a roller coaster of emotions. Classic examples of comedy horror films include Scream, Shaun of the Dead, which they mispronounce or misspell as Schumann,
Shuan.
Shuan, and A Cabin in the Woods. So let's talk
Yes.
about those examples for a second, and then we'll get into example of one of my favorite horror movies, which you probably know which I'm going to talk about.
Oh yeah.
But the first Scream movie, I'm not entirely sure I would classify that as comedic.
No.
It's definitely a parody slash satire, but I wouldn't consider it comedic.
Yeah, I don't think I would consider that one more on the comedic side. I mean, it had funny parts to it, but it was still more of a basic horror than it was a comedy horror. But Dale and Tucker versus the world or whatever that one is, like
Tucker
that
and
one
Dale
is
versus the
definitely
Forces of Evil or something like that.
yes, that thank you. You knew which one I was talking about. Um
Is that the
that one,
one
that's
where
a comedy
it's
horror.
where it's the two, like, I don't like using this term, but it's basically the two rednecks who really accidentally like terrorizes up this teens in like a reverse horror movie kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, and at one point they're like running. I'm not trying to give any spoilers, but like these teenagers come up on the cabin or whatever, and one of them trips over his feet and falls into a wood chipper, and the guy's like, "Oh man, he just tripped into a wood chipper." Like that is it's comedy gold, but in a horror setting, and that one was like A+ for me because it made me laugh almost the entire time while trying to be scary, but it wasn't. Um and then Army of the Dead. Yep. Uh
See,
Evil
Schizophrenia,
Dead,
yeah,
any of those. Yeah.
Schizophrenia that the first Scream was total satire versus comedy. Yeah,
Oh yeah. 100% more satire than comedy. Dale and Tucker had me cackling. Yes, it was hilarious. Um Jen says, but I do know that in Scream they do make fun of the standard horror girl.
yeah,
They do, but it was satire. It wasn't so much more of a comedy. Like it wasn't having you sitting there laughing constantly through the whole thing.
and
Like, yeah, it just wasn't.
I think
And it ended up creating that whole section of horror with Ghostface. Anyways, you think?
oh,
Go
it
ahead.
did.
I keep cutting you off.
Yeah, it's all good. I was gonna say, I think that one of the other examples that they give in this article, "Cabin in the Woods," I think that blurs the line between comedic and parody. It's definitely
It
parody.
does.
It's definitely satire. But at some parts of it are actually kind of funny. Like
Yes.
not rolling on the floor laughing, but just kind of funny. But I think it's definitely
Yeah.
leans to more towards the more paranormal side
Oh
than, or
yeah.
not paranormal. Fuck, what's the word I'm thinking of? Parody.
Parody. Yes.
Parody, not paranormal. Parody.
I was trying to think of the word too, and I was like, yeah, it's very, it's very much a parody horror as well. Um, it was it didn't have me laughing constantly because it did have a lot of actual scare factor to it. Like it kind of made you go ooh because it had some gore in it. But
It had a lot of gore in one particular scene.
yes, and it just wasn't. I don't know. To me, it wasn't so much a comedy horror as it was. It did blur those lines quite a bit. It was on the fence for sure.
Yeah, I think
Shaun of the
rather.
Dead though, that's 100%
Oh,
comedy horror.
yeah, absolutely.
100%.
I think for Cabin in the Woods, it's more less comedy, like less laughing comedy and more like ironic comedy. Because
Mhm.
there's the one specific example, for anyone who hasn't seen it, there's one of the characters like says multiple times throughout the movie that he wants to like see a mermaid at one point. Because like the mermaid is like never picked for the thing. Like I'm not going to spoil Cabin in the Woods, so that's about as much as I'm going to say for that. But there's one
Right.
character who just like desperately wants to see a mermaid at some point. When stuff happens and like monsters are released against people, that's all I'm going to say about that. He finally gets to see a mermaid, which then kills him.
Yes. That was good.
It's like it's that
Where does my
kind of
spawn
comedy.
keep going? My spawn is there and then leaves. I keep seeing a blur of spawn, and then he disappears.
Spawn, by the way, is the nickname that Vineyardtrio has for her child, who keeps appearing in the background of the camera and
Yes.
laughing.
Yes. Those that don't know or whatever, yes. My son, I call it his nickname in this house is Spawn. Because he is my spawn. I made him. I could sell him on Etsy if I wanted to, because I made him.
I don't think that's legal in America. Other countries,
Don't
maybe,
judge me.
not in America. One more movie that I would love to tack on to this comedic section, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, is Willy's Wonderland.
Willy's Wonderland. Oh, that is comedy horror gold right there. I think that and Shaun of the Dead are two I could watch repeatedly as well.
So Willy's Wonderland, the very basic synopsis of Willy's Wonderland that I can give is, imagine Five Nights at Freddy's in movie form with Nick Cage, and Nick Cage plays a total badass, an actual total badass, who says nothing.
Nothing.
Not a single word throughout the entire movie.
Never says, "Ooh, we were almost placing bets." We were like, "Oh God, please say at least like at the end of this movie, say one word. Just be like, no, or like say something."
Okay, you know what? I am actually going to write a note down right here on my notepad, because I know Snowy Wolfo mentioned the Discord horror movie stream, like watch party.
It needs to happen for sure.
The first one we are watching is going to be Willy's Wonderland, and I am going to write it down on my notepad right now.
Do it right meow. Another one that I would consider as a comedy horror, Velocipaster. That one is hardcore comedy horror. Like,
I have never actually seen that.
oh man, if you want to sit there and laugh the entire time and have the old Chinese blood splattering effect,
See?
then yes, 100% get
proof it. That I wrote it down so that we will not forget it. What other good...
Ready for him to say the name of the soda? That sounds like a porn title. Oh yeah, see, Skits knows. Velocipaster. Oh man, it's good. It likes to play off of 80s horror movies.
Well, with a name like Velocipaster, I would completely expect that.
Yes. It literally plays off of 70s, it's more 70s, but it's filmed like from the 80s. It plays off of like being in the 70s, filmed in the 80s, low budget, with the bad Chinese blood splatter spray, that's like exaggerated. If you cut your finger and it's just like, and they're just like,
D tier campy movies.
Yes.
It's a parody of D tier campy movies.
Yeah. And it's like that, but the whole time you're like laughing. And it's good. I will ruin your life with Velocipaster.
Sounds like I need to watch Velocipaster at some point.
You do.
Let's see,
There's a comedy horror film called Ticks.
It has Alfonso Ribeiro and Seth Green. Interesting. Seth Green's a really good actor.
There you go. Yeah.
In fact, I think he played a character in the new season of Love, Death, and Robots. I think it sounds like him, but I didn't pay attention to the credits. That's actually a good series if you like horror and like comedic at times, is Love, Death, and Robots, which the new season actually just dropped this week. And I binged all of it yesterday.
Oh, so that's where you were.
Yep. Pretty much. I watched, I think it was 7 episodes before stream, and then did my stream, then watched the last 2 immediately afterwards. I think it was honestly probably their best season.
Big Trouble in Little China. That's another good one. Yep.
That's another one I haven't
Um,
seen.
oh God, what is it called? Little Shop of Horrors.
I started watching that one, didn't realize it was an actual musical, and this was during the phase where I just like couldn't stand musicals, period. So like halfway through the first song, I realized this is a musical, and I turned it off. I need to go back and watch that again.
Yes, it's good. It's good. Even with it being a musical, it's definitely comedy horror, and that was another one watching growing up, and it did make me kind of scared of plants. I'm not gonna lie to you. Venus flytraps, I was scared of them for a while, that I thought if I stuck my finger in one that it would clamp down and eat it. So I stayed away from them. And our old neighbors in Tennessee, our neighbors across the street, my best friend growing up, she was so excited when she got a Venus flytrap, and I was like, oh my God, I am so terrified. She's like, look at it. Here, you want to feed it a fly? And I was so scared because I thought if I even got my finger the least bit close that it was just going to... No. I do not want to feed you, Seymour.
There's something I was about to say, now I forget what it was. What other comedic horror movies have you seen? Can you think of any off the top of your head?
Any others? I feel like there's a lot, because I know a lot of people, it's funny because when they watch like a horror movie or whatever, that they'll be like, okay, now I gotta go watch like SpongeBob or some cartoon to make me get the feel goods, you know? So this way I don't have nightmares. Me, I'm like, okay, I gotta watch a comedy horror because I need the feel goods and the scare. Or the gore, or the whatever. So I just feel like, I don't know.
Would scary movie count? I guess scary movie would count.
Because it's a play on horror.
Yeah, it's more like, it's not even satire. It's just straight up parody comedy.
Yeah, it's 100 parody comedy.
I'm not sure I would actually classify them as horror, just because they are making fun of certain things.
Right.
I guess technically they do fall under comedic horror.
Yeah. Because it's based on the horror films, and they still show some aspect of the horror, but it's not, I don't know, those are like that gray area where it's just straight comedy and comedy horror, you know?
Yeah, although I will say Scary Movie 2, honestly, one of my favorite movies. I really, really enjoy that one. The one where they're making fun of House on Haunted Hill, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the end, they do that whole Charlie's Angels parody fight thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty good movie. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. Little Shop of Horrors, the main actor for Doctor whatever. No, I'm thinking of something different. I'm thinking of Dr. Horrible Sing Along. Never mind.
Okay.
Ignore me.
Okay.
I was thinking of a different actor. Yeah.
Got Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Killer Tomatoes.
My God, I forgot about that. I've never seen
Mars
the actual
Attacks.
movie, but Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, there was a Saturday morning cartoon series, and I still remember the jingle. I'm not going to sing it because I can't fucking sing, but I still remember it, and I loved it so much. It was such a weird cartoon.
Yeah, it was. It really was. But yeah, that made me, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes instantly made me think of Mars Attacks. That's another comedy horror right there. That was
actually a Tim Burton movie, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah. I don't know if he produced or directed, but I know it's got his name on it somewhere.
One or the other. It's always one or the other.
Right.
But also, speaking of Tim Burton movies, Nightmare Before Christmas, my absolute favorite movie, technically a horror movie. Borderline horror movie.
Right.
Because I can see how it could be super fucking scary for kids with the imagery that it has sometimes.
Yeah.
mean, it
Max
has.
wouldn't watch it for a while because it scared him.
I remember seeing the trailer for it or a commercial for it on TV as a kid, and just immediately thinking, I need to see this movie. And I was like 6 years old.
Yep. Oh, I got everybody going on with Mars Attacks. The act.
See, as Snowy saying,
so
play
good.
the jingle, but you may not be able to. I don't know if that would actually be considered copyright or a DMCA strike, but I don't want to risk it just in case. I want to go back to what Shadow Rift said a couple minutes ago, saying movies have helped us to give us completely realistic, in all caps, expectations for how dangerous mundane things are. Which actually made me think of, I don't know if it's, I don't think it's a parody or comedic horror or satire, but I think it's called Rubber, where a tire is possessed and goes around killing people. Just a tire. Let me see.
That's not what that sounds like that movie would be about.
No, it doesn't. But let me see if I can pull up at least like the movie poster or something for this.
Maximum Overdrive is what Mechanical Whimsy says. Reminds him of a Maximum Overdrive. Skid says, I love the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah.
Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, this.
Snowy Wolfo needs to take back what she said. Just stop. Take it back. Take it back.
I know this is kind of scuffed, but I don't want to lose audio again. But
hang on, people over. Just.
This is the trailer for Rubber, or the movie poster for Rubber. It is quite literally a possessed tire that goes around and tries to kill people.
I like how it says funny, gory, and downright insane. Careful where you tread. But
yeah. Okay, enough of that. But yeah, just movies like that. There's one called, I think it's called Jack Frost or Killer Frost or something, where it's a snowman that comes to life and starts killing people. There's one about a haunted printing press that comes to life and starts eating people that get too close to it.
I was about to say, I want to say it was Jack Frost.
But yeah, there's an entire range of movies like that, where it's just stupid, fucking, mundane things that get possessed.
So, yes, we had a little mini horror, like, satire horror or whatever, like, it was almost like the Sabcock of horror movies, over in my Discord at one point, and we watched The Killer Couch, which is actually a Lazy Boy.
That was one that you told me about.
It was so bad, but so funny at the same time.
All of these movies are so bad.
Yes,
I think
they're
that's
so
the whole
bad.
point of them, is they're so bad that they're funny.
And then I think there was
Killing is another one. Murder Turkey.
Yeah, Murder Turkey. And then there was, I think it was The Killer Pinata or something like that, and it's legit one of those like little bitty pinatas that goes around just killing everybody, and I'm like, huh? Excuse me?
Oh,
it's
I need to, what Jen just said in chat, and what your sentence was, the Killer Couch is actually a Lazy Boy chair. I'm adding that to my no context quote.
You should do it. Can't with that whole it was, yeah, Killer Pinata. I need to see the skits. If you did, you would be laughing, because it was, whoo boy. At one point, there's one of the people is in the house, and he's like the only one that's not getting laid or whatever. And he just goes into the kitchen and he's like, man, these are some damn good chips, and just opens a bag of chips and starts eating chips. Like,
Also, yeah, Max Kid Live, welcome in. Always nice to see you. How are you doing tonight? We are currently discussing comedic horror movies. I think we've kind of strayed away from the original topic of discussion, like what defines horror, but I'm having fun talking
Yes
about
and
comedic
no.
horror. We are still talking about comedic horror,
Yes.
so
Yeah. We've been through a few of the genres, and talked about, what elicits fear, what scares us, and if anybody has anything that they want to say in chat, like what is scary to them, like what is horror to you, as far as like game, book, movie, anything, let us know, and right now we're in the discussion of comedic horror and just how some like are riding that line between satire and actual comedy, but they're all still horror. Um,
see.
let's see
Curiously,
here.
Jen asking Max Kid Live what their favorite horror movie is,
Horror
and they're
movie
saying either
is
Final Destination or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original and none
yeah,
of that remake BS.
yeah,
Final Destination
yeah.
is a
Final
real good one.
Destination. Yep.
Life's About Joy, thank you for the follow and welcome in. How are you doing tonight? We are currently discussing horror movies, what defines horror movies in general. We've kind of strayed away from that topic and are more just talking about like horror movies. Final
Ooh, see,
Destination movies are the best
yep.
guilty pleasure. I disagree because there's nothing guilty about it.
Nothing guilty about it.
But I will say, to this day, because of Final Destination 2, to this day, I refuse, absolutely refuse, to be behind a
Scared
truck
of
with
logging
logs on
trucks. Yes. Yes.
As soon as I see one on the highway, I will get 3 lanes over if possible. I will get as far away from it as possible.
I'll get on the other end of the median. I'll be in the whole other end of traffic. I'll be in the wrong side of the road, going wrong way just to get around. Like I don't care.
And
I
will get past them as soon as I possibly can, because I refuse to be behind them.
Yep. Better not see no cop around.
Trucks carrying anything like that. Like I agree, Jen. Like logs, like steel rods, especially those thin steel rods. Those are even worse than logs.
Oh, those are even worse than logs. Yes.
Worse than those is the car carrying trucks, especially when they have that back ramp lowered.
Oh.
And the only thing stopping that car on there from falling off and slamming face first into you is these really thin straps.
Yes. And hello, Joy.
Hello, Joy.
And look, Max Kid Live. It actually says Scream being comedy or not. And that was something we had discussed because it was listed in the site as being a comedy horror. And we've kind of been back and forth with Scream, whether or not it was a comedy horror or not.
Yeah, I feel it's less comedy horror and more parody / satire. Because it's not one of those ones that has you laughing every 5 minutes, but
right.
I mean, it's still, if you don't know it's a parody or satire, it's still a really good slasher flick.
Yeah, for sure.
But it is definitely satire. It is not comedic in the generally accepted comedy sense, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, because I think we kind of compared it to like Shaun of the Dead, how Shaun of the Dead and things like that. You're pretty much laughing almost, and it was Dale and Tucker. Like you're almost laughing while you're watching a gory movie or something of that nature, where it's supposed to be horror, but it's more comedy. Whereas Scream felt more satire, but it eventually led to a full-on horror franchise. Where it still had some of that satire-esque to it, but it was still pretty, like I said, it launched the whole ghost face scare thing. So it's just, I don't know.
Speaking of ghosts, in the background of your audio, I can hear a kitty, but I can't see a kitty. It's a ghost kitty.
Oh, I got ghost kitty. That would be Lily making her loud noises, wanting to be in the room. Because, it's 10 minutes to dinner.
Oh, of course.
Mom, feed me. I'm starving.
Well, she's just gonna have to wait today.
Yes.
Or let Husbando take care of her.
Oh, he's gonna feed her.
Yeah. I was gonna say, more likely Husbando's gonna take care of it. Let's move on
Joy.
to... Sorry?
Joy says, what would you say are top 3 terrifying Netflix at the moment and why?
Top 3 terrorizing Netflix. Or terrifying Netflix, sorry.
And no, it's not Fossa. It's Lily. Yeah, it's Lily. You hear my kitty.
That's a really good question. So I don't watch Netflix a lot lately, but I will say I've been enjoying the hell out of Love, Death, and Robots. There is another series like it called Oats, or from Oats Studio. It may actually be called Oats Studio or something. But it's kind of like Love, Death, and Robots, except more intense and more serious. Not not really terrifying in the classic sense of like being scared of what you're seeing on the screen, but definitely more unsettling about how they present certain scenarios. Like there is without giving too much away, there's one episode of Oats Studio where there's a couple episodes where they're dealing with like if robots have souls, or if robots have like actual consciousness. And it turns out that these robots, these androids, have living minds transferred into them, which some people feel is unnatural. So there's one point where this one woman has like been journeying across the desert, or like across a wasteland, gets to this sanctuary with like some monks and stuff who just abhor the robots. And her test to be able to join them is to shoot one of these robots in the head and kill it, effectively killing it. She's about to do it, and then the robot calls her name in her dead brother's voice.
Ooh.
So then she has to make the choice of, because she abhors robots too, now she has to make a choice of, do I kill this robot because it's a sin against nature, or do I not because it's the last living remnant of my dead brother?
Ooh.
That, to me, that's terrifying because of the implications behind it, rather than like jump scary, like startling in your face loud noise on screen.
Yeah.
And that's why Soma got to me so much, because of the existential questions that it forced me to look at for myself. But that
I think that goes along with the whole eliciting fear with the senses, like in the mind fuckery of it.
I want to look up that series because I know it's Oats Studios something. I want to look it up just so I can have the proper name for everyone.
And yeah, Max Kid Live also said, I would say if it's meant to unsettle you, it could qualify as horror. And that I brought up near the beginning when we first started. I had this whole thing about what was the actual legit definition of horror. And basically, when it came to anything that was entertainment based, whether it was movies, books, games, things of that nature, that it was anything that would elicit fear in a person. So yeah, 100%. Anything that causes that need to be
that like
fearful,
that like visceral guttural reaction. Yeah. And
yes,
it is just called Oats Studios. That's the name of the series, and then each individual episode has its own name as well.
Yeah, soul fear rather than jump fear.
That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Instead of constantly saying mind fuck, it's a soul fear. But it's the same, like it messes with your head. Like it gives you all those questions, and I don't know. I'm down for a good jump scare anytime because I enjoy the heart racing feeling. But I also want to have I want to be questioning things.
So speaking of jump scares, there is one that I think was done masterfully, and it's in the first It movie, the first recent It movie, It Chapter 1. When I think the girl's name is Beverly, when she just, and spoilers for It Chapter 1 by the way for this particular part, it's the part where she's in the bathroom and her father had like just attacked her. She finally beat him by like hitting him over the head with the back of a toilet tank and like knocking him out. And like just when you think she's won, she turns around and it is right there. You only see him for like a second and then it cuts to black, but he's right fucking there. Like I audibly gasped because I was not expecting that one.
Oh, I wish we were watching it and I heard you gasp. Oh, those are like when you turn in a test and you think you just bombed it and then the teacher hands it back and she's got that shiny gold star sticker on it and you're just like, to me, seeing you gasp like that, I have that same reaction, like, woo, yes!
So for anyone new to chat, Lights About Joy, Max Kid Live, you guys might not know this, but I don't get scared. Like, I play a lot of horror games on stream. There are games with a lot of jump scares. I don't get jump scared. It's just a thing. I don't get jump scared. There's been very few times that I've been jump scared. So like what Vineyard was saying, when I actually do, it's like to everyone else, it's just super satisfying seeing me actually react because I don't react to it.
Yes.
And that's part of the reason why I play horror games on stream. Is so, like, I say it a lot, like, I play these games so you don't have to. Because I don't get scared.
I think I'm kind of a mix between you and my sister because Jen, she legit will be jumping at every little thing. Like, there's even a clip of her going into a locker in a game, and because she hit the button, and the person goes in the locker to hide, and she's like, oh shit! She scared herself.
I think I remember that.
Yeah. And then you're just like, if something that happens, you're just like, hello? And I'm kind of in between, like, I'll either go, oh, that was scary, or I'm to have the full reaction like my sister, or I'll just be like, yes, hello, that wasn't that scary. Like, I'm kind of a mix between you guys. Like, I'm right there in the center where loud noises will get me startled. Certain scenes won't really scare me. If I know it's coming, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, okay, hey, what's up? But just watching my sister scare herself, oh man, that's so good. Growing up, she would try to scare me, and in the end, she would legit scare herself because she was trying to scare me. Like, there's somebody outside. There's somebody outside.
So I will say this. There was one movie we were watching, I don't remember what it was. I just do not remember what it was. There was one, it was like really quiet during a certain scene. Then there was a sudden loud noise. And you gasped, you jumped.
Mm-hmm.
The noise from the movie didn't scare me because I was expecting it. What scared me was you jumping and making that loud noise because you like screamed into the microphone.
I was so half asleep. I don't remember what movie we were watching, but yes, I was half asleep because the movie itself was boring me to tears. Well, actually, it was boring me to sleep. Either that or it was just so late. I don't remember which one it was. I don't remember what movie it was, but then it did this like loud screeching noise or whatever. And it scared me awake. And so I was like, ah!
And then your scream made me jump.
I heard you go, yeah, I heard you go, oh. I was like, did you actually get scared? And you were like, no, you scared me. And no, Jen, I will not stop calling you out. It's so good. Joyce says I have a history of punching or flailing at things that pop up and scare me. Same.
See, it's a good thing that I don't, or else, well, I guess for me it doesn't matter because I don't get scared. But it's like some of the games I play, it's a good thing like you're not playing them or Jen's not playing them and have that kind of reaction because you guys would go through monitors every week.
Yes. Yes. I'm pretty sure my husband would be like, okay, I got monitors hiding out in boxes in the back because you keep breaking them for punching them. Sorry.
I see Mechanical Whimsy saying they're actually a bit jumpy, not afraid, just startled. Like it's almost like a reboot process where they have to completely change their attention and reassess the situation. Kind of like when you got jumped when you were half asleep. It's
Yeah,
like that's
it's
exactly
it's
that
the
kind of
startle
situation.
response. Yeah.
Which I
Yep,
think
Jen's throwing a controller.
I remember that. Lights About
Yes,
Joy
on
said their
stream.
household plays Phasmophobia. I love Phasmophobia. We really need to start playing that again. I miss. It's
Yes.
been months since I've played.
It's been a while. Yes.
Um, Speaking like going back to jump scares and like relating to horror in general. I think jump scares, if done improperly, are a very cheap way of
Yeah.
getting that response. But when done right, like the one I mentioned with Pennywise in It Chapter One in Beverly, I think that was just done masterfully. And like I said, it made me audibly gasp because and everyone in the theater because we just were not expecting it.
Oh yeah. The ones where they do that build up sound effect where it's just like
Yeah,
almost like that Jaws theme. And then it's like it goes dead silent. You're like, okay, I know it's coming. Those are those cheap startled jump scares, and those are awful. Those are like D tier quality scare tactics. But yeah, the Pennywise one, there was a few, and I think even The Conjuring, where it had us both kind of be like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that." Those are like actual good jump scares. Like I know that there's even a jump scare list available where you can see how many jump scares are in a movie, and I feel like the higher amount of jump scares are in a movie,
the
the
worse it
more
is.
D tier, yeah, the worse it is because that's what they rely on is that jump scare factor. Like, no, I want to be scared because I heard the sound of bees and a baby crying at the same time, and no, thank you. Like, that's what's scary, not just getting startled a whole bunch.
So there's one movie that I think does. Okay, forget what I said about It Chapter One. I think this is the perfect jump scare, like the best done
Okay.
jump scare in all of horror. Alien, the first
Ooh,
chest burster scene when you don't know what's gonna happen because you don't know what the chest burster is, and then it
yeah.
rips out of John Hurt's chest. The first time I saw that, it didn't jump scare me because I was old enough or I was past the point of being scared by jump scares. But
Yeah.
I know quite a few people who have had such a violent visceral reaction to it that they vomited on the spot
Wow.
because it was that scary to them. It triggered that much of their flight or fight response. They have actually vomited. And also,
Yeah.
fun fact, a lot of people probably already know this, but fun fact, the actors in that scene did not know that was happening. Their
Yep.
reactions to it were real. They were completely fucking terrified of what was happening.
I think there's a few movies where they've done that to the actors, where they've had frightening scenes happen and they don't let the actors know because they want 100% their legit response to come through. They want that horror factor to come through. And that's when it's just like, good. Like, it's gold because it makes you feel that fear even more because you can see, like, it's not a clear, like, I'm scared. Like,
It's
you see
genuine fear. It's a
genuine
genuine
fear.
terror reaction.
Yes, that's when it's excellent
And I think there's
because it's
something,
honest.
because
Yes.
it's honest, yeah. And I think there is something like hardwired into human brains where we can actually tell if it's a genuine fear reaction or if it's a fake one. And if it's a
Hmm.
genuine one, then our brains are like, okay, this person is genuinely scared of something. What is around us that we need to be scared too? And it kickstarts that fight or flight response.
Yeah, it's kind of that same when you see someone panicking and taking off at a run. It's almost like your brain's like, oh God, something's coming. I need to run too. And then you start running, and then you look at the person, and you're like, why are we running? What's chasing you, bro? And then they're just kind of like, they either tell you, or I've seen people where they've just literally stopped and then been like, nothing. just and you stop too, and then you're kind of like, why was I scared then?
Mhm.
I saw you freaking out and running, so I thought, fuck, I gotta freak out and run too. Like,
Yep.
clearly something's happening.
Let's see, Max Kid Live is saying, like when the Friday the 13th jump scare when someone is walking around a creepy scene, then all of a sudden a cat jumps out, goes calm for a few seconds, and then you see Jason wrapping a machete around their neck. Yeah, it's fake out jump scare.
Oh, those are really good too. If they're done well, ooh, that can be really good because you get that first, you get startled, and then you get scared because it's like, oh, the cat startled me, and then you see the initial gore, or the slasher part of it, and then you're like, oh, that's scary. That is, no, thank you.
And I think a part of
Those are good too.
I think a part of the fake out jump scares are the initial one is to like get that initial physiological reaction. It's like, oh, okay, something's wrong, something's scary. We need, okay, never mind, it's all calm, and then it gets you as you're already in that heightened state, and then that second reaction it's just like exponentially increased. Like that's what I feel it is, like the effectiveness of the fake out jump scares like that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Zafoy, welcome in. How are you doing tonight? Let's see, remember reading reports about The Exorcist that would trigger vomit and passing out during the headspin scene? I don't doubt that.
I can see that for sure.
For its time, The Exorcist was really extreme. And then the way they did like certain things, like subliminally playing the sound of buzzing bees during certain scenes to trigger those the heightened responses, I could completely see people passing out and vomiting from scenes like that.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. Get you to put your guard down while your adrenaline is pumping.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. The movie wasn't jump scary, but psychological horror is the fourth kind. Something lights on for a month. Interesting. I've heard of the fourth kind, but I don't know what it's about. Is that something like aliens or something? But I've heard really good things about it. But I've never actually seen it myself.
Bond he started to leave and then was like, wait a minute, I gotta get my 5 seconds of fame on.
Yeah. I expect that to be a regular occurrence on these shows.
Oh yeah. Everybody get ready to see Spawn pop in. He won't anymore tonight. Because now he's gotta go to bed.
Alright, so we have a little over 20 minutes left. How about we talk about some of our favorite horror movies? Well, I mean...
Yeah, I was about to say, with the other genres, or rather, not so much genres, or we could even go into games. Like, we did books earlier. What about games?
Okay.
We were talking about playing games.
Yeah, let's talk about some games. Skits mentioning alien abduction and psychologists trying to help clients. Oh, talking about fourth kind, okay. Gotcha. I saw alien and then abduction and then read that as alien isolation real quick.
I figured my brain did too. I'm not gonna lie, because we were talking about Alien earlier. So, yeah. For you, what is? I guess we could pose this. What was one that actually was scary, like for you, that made you feel that fear?
Before I say that, I'm going to answer Snowy Wolfo's question. What was the one that actually made me jump? I think you mentioned earlier it was Maid of Sker. Maid of Sker. Yes. Sker. Sker, however you want to pronounce that. I say Sker. But there was one scene where you're like, it's nice and quiet. You're walking down this hallway. There's like a window off to the side, like right here, like a big window. And when you get close enough, a body just comes slamming right through the window. And just makes a super loud sound, and just like the visual and then the sound together, like it made me jump. And like Snowy said, I replayed that section the next time I played on stream because unfortunately it didn't save, and it still made me jump even though I knew it was happening.
That's I remember one that the first time you made that audible gasp. The second jump was just. It was like you saw you jump, but not nearly as much as that first one. That first one, you jumped and you heard a gasp.
Right. Also, I do, for the chatters, I do want to apologize for the camera for Vineyardtrio. I think your internet's probably acting up again. It usually does.
It is. It's getting late and it's apparently getting really overcast and cloudy, so it's yeah.
That's
It's gonna start acting a little wonky.
that's the real scary thing to modern audiences is bad internet connection.
Yes.
But what was your question about like the games?
What was one that actually scared you? A game that legit scared you, or gave you that heart palpitation or extreme adrenaline. I'm not gonna say nightmare inducing, but just scary, just like it was heart racing.
Anatomy. Without even thinking, Anatomy. So there's an indie game that I have attempted to play several times called Anatomy. The first time I played it, I had, like, just before that, I had played a game called Anxiety Attacks, which is not an actual horror game, but it's designed to simulate. It's designed to give you the same biological response that people get when they're going through an anxiety attack or a panic attack. And it kind of worked. It got me into that state of like real like uneasiness to the point where I wasn't quite hyperventilating, but I could feel myself starting to get to that point by the time the game ended. Immediately after that, I played this game called Anatomy, where you are going through a dark house and collecting these cassette tapes. And when you play, you put the cassette tapes into a tape player, and it talks about how like a house can be likened to a body, like different rooms are like different organs and stuff. My point is just like going through that dark house, expecting something to happen as I was already in that borderline panic state. I genuinely believe it gave me a very mild form of PTSD, because like I had to stop playing Anatomy after like 20-30 minutes. I had to stop and I couldn't play it anymore, and I actually ended stream early because I was so anxious and in that extremely agitated state. So a couple months later, I went back to try to play Anatomy again. Figured
I was about to say,
I
didn't
calmed
you
down.
play it again?
I did play it again. I figured it was like time's passed. I've calmed down. It would probably be fine. I started playing it again, and as soon as I started walking through the house, I started having a mini panic attack for no reason other than the memory of trying to play that game before when I was already in that agitated state, which is, that's literally what PTSD is, from my understanding. And I attempted to play Anatomy 5 times. I finally managed to do it on the 5th attempt. And like I forced myself to play through the entire game. Like everyone who was watching stream, like every time I tried to play those, like you could see I was like genuinely agitated and getting upset. And of course, it turns out there were no jump scares. There's nothing actually scary about the game at all, except that darkness, that fear of the unknown, expecting a jump scare.
Yeah, that anticipation for it, because it sets you up almost for the jump scares. Because I remember I wasn't there when you played it the first time, but I know I was there the second time you played it, and I watched you play it like the whole way through, and even I was feeling that anticipation, even though there was a few times you had Dixper going as well, and I know I got you a couple of times with Dixper.
It was a mistake having Dixper running during that game.
It really was, because in all honesty, if I wasn't the one doing like the Dixper alert, there was times where it actually scared me when either someone else had done it or you would turn a corner too fast, and even if there was like nothing happening, it still would be that there's nothing there. Okay. Because it was like that constant heightened anticipation. because it made you feel like something was gonna happen, like you were gonna get jump scared, and then it never happened.
Yep, and it certainly did not help that. So Anatomy is a game where it takes multiple playthroughs. I think it took like 3 playthroughs to get through all the way, and it did change. Each playthrough changed.
Yeah.
The first time when you went around collecting all the tapes, it was fine. Like the tapes would just like play. The voice, like the quality of the recording coming off of it, which this was by design. It wasn't just poor audio recording for the development studio, but the quality of the audio coming from the tape was kind of low by design to get you like into that. Okay, something's a little off here, but it's fine. In the subsequent playthrough, the second playthrough, each tape got gradually more distorted, which that by itself is just like generally upsetting to a lot of people. And then that combined with going through this dark house and just constantly expecting something to jump out at you, but nothing ever does. It just it's very anxiety inducing. And so that's my answer to your question, where like a game that like legitimately scared me and terrified me is Anatomy.
Yep. And Mechanical Whimsy hit it on the head there. I really like that you said the word anticipation. Horror is kind of waiting for something bad to happen, almost like acute anxiety. And yeah, it's exactly that, because you're so heightened to this waiting, this anticipation, that it builds that sense of anxiety because you're just on edge. And that is another sort of horror right there, like in and of itself, because that anxiety, that legit on edge, like you're waiting to either get pushed over or pushed back on the rest of the grass, it's you're on that edge.
And I think
that's terrifying.
And I think that's why jump scares, when done right, are effective, and then when not done right, are completely ineffective. Because when they're done right, they build that anticipation and wait till just the right moment to get you. But then if it's done improperly and it just doesn't work, like the moment's passed or it comes too early, you're not quite at that level. And then if a movie, like we mentioned this earlier, for a movie just like relies on jump scare after jump scare after jump scare, your body like eventually gets used to it. It's like,
oh yeah,
after like 3 or 4 times, your body is like, oh, okay, there's a pattern here. Let's ignore the pattern. It's not dangerous. And then it doesn't work anymore. The same way the roller coaster works, chug, chug up to the top of the ride, and then
that is a perfect analogy.
It really is.
100%.
It really is, because I know I love roller coasters. I did not for a long time because of that anticipation. It's like going up and up and up so slowly and then getting to the top of the hill. And then some of them, it seems like you just sit there for a second and then all this, like for the anticipation, and then it just, boom, it just hits you.
Oh yeah. I think that's why I like roller coasters as much as I do, because
now
I enjoy horror.
Now, totally. So, that is the exact reason why I like roller coasters.
Oh yeah. Get my heart going. Let's go.
See, Life's About Joy is saying, I already have an on-edge state of anxiety. Hypervigilance makes being scared for entertainment not a healthy place. That is a good point to bring up, because I know, like, how am I gonna actually say this? Like, I don't know how to properly explain what I want to say. But I'm glad you brought that up, because there are people who, like, when their bodies get put into that fight or flight response, it's an extreme reaction. I mean, some people will lash out, and when they're scared, their first instinct is to just punch the thing that's scaring them, which was talked about earlier in the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to explain what I want to say. Like, I don't know the words for it. But I think you understand what I'm trying to get to.
Oh, yeah. it's not a typical fight or flight or freeze response. It's like almost to an extreme.
Yeah. It's like a drunk owner
Systemic, like a
whiskey that
drunk.
gets me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fairly accurate. Yeah,
that's
I would say that.
actually a good way to put it. Chemical
It's
reaction
a
fears
mean
that mean
reaction.
reaction, yeah.
Mhm.
And of course, being constantly like put into a constant state of borderline anxiety, eventually it gets to the point where like your body's had enough, and then whatever reaction you're going to get from like the surface tension breaking is going to be a very extreme reaction.
Right. There's
Uh,
a fine line for some people between horror and trauma. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yep. And it's like going back to anatomy, I think the entire first couple times I was playing that, I think I was riding that line the whole way because of the anxiety
Mhm.
attacks game before that. It put me into that pseudo trauma state rather than just like anxiety from horror. It was anxiety from from in it was invented trauma. It was not actual trauma. So like I don't like saying it gave me pseudo PTSD, but that's literally what it did. Because even now, even though I've completed anatomy and like I've conquered my fear, basically, even now, just thinking about it, just thinking about how I felt playing anatomy for the first time, I'm starting to get that reaction again.
Oh yeah. I could see it. I could see it. Jen saying that when Doza, her husband, my brother-in-law took her to go see Dark Skies, tried to make herself as small as possible to get away from the aliens on the screen. Her flight was kicking in. She was crying, gripping the cup holders, and Joy saying it's Freddy Krueger that 35 years later, still convinced, going to be killed in her sleep by him. Yep.
I mean, Freddy Krueger, like Skits is saying, Freddy Krueger is no joke.
Yeah, that's nightmare fuel. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's
Literally,
even in the
nightmare
name.
fuel.
Nightmare. And I could see, yeah, it's definitely riding that line between um just genuine horror to just trauma. And I think that's why some people can or cannot do horror, because yes, it elicits fear, but some of those movies, when they do elicit the fear, it's almost, it elicits the wrong fear. It elicits a traumatic fear. And those are the ones where it's like I was saying, like with some, I could almost put myself in their shoes with like the harm to children or things like that. And it's like, it bothers me to watch those. Like I said with Mr. Mercedes, I had to put it down. I could not keep reading it. I eventually did, but when it came out, my son was freshly out of the womb, and I could not read this book. And it's just, it almost relates too much to a trauma or to a life event or something in your own personal life that is too scary that you just got to walk away from it. Like you can't handle it. Your body can't.
I want to read what Lights About Joy. This is going to be the last thing we talk about because we only have a couple minutes left on the stream.
Yes.
Lights About Joy said, "Okay, not sure if you covered this. How do you feel about the statement horror movies and media have desensitized the next generation?" Personally, I feel that the next generation has been a little bit desensitized, not because of the horror aspect, but because of how prevalent violence and gore is, which is generally a big part of horror movies. But also, like media, you see stories about shootings and like killing stuff all the time. I think that has played more into the desensitization, as it is, because I don't think that desensitization is like as great as people say it is, just in general. But I feel just the how prevalent violence in general is in American media. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is were the cause of the desensitization rather than horror itself, because violence and gore typically tend to be big in horror movies as compared to other genres. What do you think?
Mainstream violence. I have to agree
Mainstream
because
violence, yeah.
Spawn likes to play certain games, and yeah, they have like horror aspects in them. He knows who Freddy Krueger is, he knows who Jason is, he knows who Chucky is. Like, he knows a lot of these scary people from horror movies.
Those aren't. I would argue that those aren't specifically horror anymore. They're pop culture, and anyone,
right now,
like everyone, knows them.
Right. But like when it comes to if he was to sit here and be like horror game, like Five Nights at Freddy, like he plays that, and he's kind of like desensitized to it, but it's not so much he's desensitized to the horror aspect of it because of the games or media. It's more the media, because there's so much bad shit in the world now that's what's desensitized him, is what's going on in the common world, versus because he's played a game or read a book or whatever. That I don't think it has much to do with the media that we have that's building from horror to desensitize the next generation, as so much as it is this world that we're living in right now. It's heckin' scary. Like, it's a horror movie in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And that's what's desensitizing. So yeah, I agree.
Yep. And Jen's saying that's why the news is so scary. They focus on violence and stories versus the lighter side of the news where things are good. Yeah, because bad stories get views. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. People don't care about the good stories, or they'll see it and say, "Oh, that's wholesome. Okay, next." But the bad
like the
things,
whole "I like turtles." Can we go back to that, please?
Yeah, exactly. But
I like turtles too.
Bad stories are the ones that stick with you. Unfortunately, that's just how we are as people. And that's, unfortunately, with the news, that's what gets views. So that's what they focus on. It's the bad stuff.
Kind of begs the question of whether being sensitive is based on how we feel about it or how we react to it.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Chicken and egg, yeah.
Brains are drawn to death and sex. That's what makes good horror movies good. Yeah, both. Which... there have been times where, so anyone who doesn't know, me and Vineyardtrio, we used to watch horror movies together a lot late at night. There have been more than a few times where we looked at the ratings for movies, saw that it was just like extreme violence, passed on it to find ones with tits.
If it ain't got titties and sex and blood, it ain't a good horror movie. I'm just saying. They're like, "Oh, it's rated R." And we're like, "Oh, yeah." And then it's like extreme violence. We're like, "Nope. It's not gonna be good. It ain't got boobies in it."
Yep. Exactly.
And then there was one that it was like, got nudity in it, and it was old lady saggy boobs, and we were like, "This is the worst kind of nudity I've ever seen in my life. This is bad."
There was one that we watched that said it had partial nudity in it, and turns out it was like a tiny little bit of side boob.
Oh, a side boob. I'm
one
like,
scene for like 3 seconds, and that was it. And by the end, we were talking, like, we were like asking each other, like, where was the nudity? Promised nudity. Where was the nudity? And I think it was me that says, like, no, there was that one, like, this probably isn't it. We probably just missed it, but there was that one scene where it was like the shirt was cut. You could see a little bit of side boob. It was like,
yeah.
And then we looked at the reviews, and then the nudity, like, everyone was saying the nudity was that.
Yes. Yep. Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
now I want an X-rated horror movie? Oh, well, Jesus.
Technically, any Jason movie at that time was just that. I mean,
you're not really wrong, but you're not 100% right. But I'm pretty sure you can find a prawn out there that that's probably kind of doing that. I mean, it's more prawn than it is horror, but yeah.
I mean, modern slasher flicks are kind of like that in scenes. Like, they almost always have topless.
Yeah. You got Clockwork Orange. Yes.
Not wrong.
Not wrong.
I wouldn't classify that as horror, but definitely not wrong. In fact, ratings are based on old ladies watching to give it the ratings we have in the US. I wouldn't doubt that.
Right.
Right.
That's another thing that we should definitely talk about in the future is how the ratings have changed with the horror field.
Yep.
From when we were kids versus now.
I'm gonna write that down because that's actually a really good topic of discussion.
Killed by a penis sculpture. Yep. Natural Born Killers had an X or NC-17 cut. Did not know that. Oh, and that Shrimplebot. For a minute, I was like, and did you know that I have a... Oh, wait.
That's Shrimplebot.
That's not a comment. That's a Shrimplebot. Thanks, Shrimplebot.
Standards of...
Movie name would be King Donged. Yes.
I'm positive that there is a movie out there already called King
yeah, I wouldn't put it past
I am 100% positive that there's a movie out there named King Dong.
So it's like an extra hour of some pretty gory shit. Most people don't know about the chainsaw scene.
Interesting. What is that in reference to? I missed. Natural Born Killers had an X or NC-17 cut. Okay. I was writing something down and I can't focus on more than one thing at a time. All right. That is all the time we have for the show tonight. Thank you everyone for being here. Jan, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself for me?
Okay.
Yes, you have to.
Okay. Hi. I would like to say I stream on Twitch, but I don't do that too very much now because they changed their TOS. I used to do a book club reading. Now I just hang out and do it in my Discord, and that's usually once a month, where we drink and read erotic romance novels. And then, yeah, when my internet gets better, we will get back into streaming on Twitch, doing horror games and doing art stuffs and whatnot. And other than that, you can kind of find me hanging out in between here and my sister's streams and Discord. Not erotic. Come on, Joy, you know.
Well, some of them are pretty erratic.
They are, I mean, they're erratic. Yeah. Some of them are just downright bad, so.
Erotic?
Erotic.
And so that is my lovely co-host Vineyardtrio. You can find her socials right there. I just linked them in the chat. And as always, my name is ShinyMikablu. If you don't already know me, I play a lot of indie horror games on stream. I play some big budget horror games. I'm currently playing through BioShock, which I will be continuing tomorrow. And you can catch my stream schedule. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, I hope to see all of you guys and some of our other streams. And I think that is going to be it for tonight. Any closing thoughts?
No, I'm really happy that everybody participated. It was very much appreciated. I really liked the feedback that everybody participated with the fact that they have some good opinions and on what they view as certain genres, like where their gray line is. And I thought that was pretty good.
I absolutely agree. And if you would like to continue this discussion, I also have a Discord server. The link is right there. Feel free to join and continue the discussion. Could we do this more often, like once a week? The plan is currently once every other week, because I'm not sure if we'd be able to like figure out like topics like every single week. So for now, the plan is every other week. But you know, who knows what'll happen in the future?
And do a watch party on the weeks that we're not doing this.
Yep. And you know, and oh yes, if we do watch parties, my Discord server right there is going to be the way to find out about it. So if you'd be interested in potentially doing watch parties along with us on Discord, which is basically one of us, probably you, because I can't share my screen on Discord because stupid computer. One of us will be sharing our screen. We'll all be in a voice call together, muted, and we will all watch the movie together. And then the next horror discussion show we have like this, we will be discussing that movie between ourselves and with chat and get everyone's thoughts on it.
And we'll even do it spoiler free, so this way those that weren't able to watch it will have no spoilers.
We'll try, but no promises.
Yeah, no promises. Most of the time, the blonde girl runs up the stairs and then gets cut, and
Pretty much. But yes, keep an eye out on Discord for that, because that will happen sometime in the future, because I do want to watch Willy's Wonderland with everyone.
Yes.
Because that is such a good movie. Alright, and with
Willy's
that...
Wonderland, Velocipaster.
Willy's Wonderland and Velocipaster. I will write that down on the list too. Do need some more serious movies on there too.
Yes.
I almost wrote Velociraptor.
That would be close.
That would be close, but not quite.
Not quite.
I think that is going to be it for stream. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you, Jan, for joining me on the stream. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing this. All right,
need longer time almost.
Yeah, well, I think 2 hours is a good amount of time for now.
Oh yeah.
And then yeah,
because we could go on all night. We've done it before.
And we have. Yep. Yeah, that is going to be it for tonight. Everyone, my next stream is going to be tomorrow at the same time, 8 p.m. Central, or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Yeah,
sorry, not Central. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just 7 p.m. Central. And like I said, I will be continuing with Bioshock. So that is going to be it for tonight. So I think for the first one, we're just gonna... I don't think we're gonna raid out, because I don't know who all's on. And honestly, I don't really care. Oof. But yeah, this was a really great stream. Thank you everyone for being here, and now's the time when we say goodnight. Good night, everyone.
Okay, good night.